Chapter 25. I'm awakened from my half-sleep by the sound of Ponner's wife greeting her husband. I wake up the high priest, and we go to greet him too. "Do you bring us good news?" the high priest asks. "Indeed I do," Ponner replies. "I've put together a team of my strongest men. They're waiting for us at the hill village. We'll have to pass the guards at the hill station. I'll tell them you're one of my men, and we're going to the hill village with supplies for the workers. Of course, Rapahamen, you'll have to hide when we get there." "When do we leave?" the high priest asks. "Now." After saying goodbye to Ponner's wife, we leave with him. Stars have begun to appear in the darkening sky. 2 donkeys loaded with baskets are waiting for us. "The baskets contain food and jars of beer for my men," he explains. He leads the way. Behind him come the donkeys, and the high priest and I bring up the rear. We head west and begin to climb a small hill. The donkeys follow Ponner silently, and we follow them, also silently, except for the sound of the high priest's labored breathing. At the top of the hill, the path divides. We go north, climb a steeper hill, then descend. This path also divides. We keep heading north, again climbing. The donkeys, like the high priest and me, are slowing down. "We're nearing the guard station," Ponner says, turning around to me. "You must hide in one of the baskets." He picks me up, puts me in a basket, and then the climb continues. Feeling the extra weight, the donkey gives out a slight bray. A few minutes later, we stop, and I hear Ponner talking and laughing with the guards. From inside the basket, I can't make out what they're saying. They're probably exchanging a dirty joke or two. I stay as still as I can, even hold my breath, afraid of making the slightest noise. The talking and laughter stop, and the climb resumes. Praise Bastet! When Ponner finally takes me out of the basket, I see the lapis sky studded with stars and the Nile plain covered with imposing mortuary temples. My heart cries out a single word: resurrection! In half an hour or so, we arrive at the hill village, where we find 5 of Ponner's men with their own donkeys. "Everything is ready," one of them tells Ponner. "Then let's go," he says, and we start our descent to Ta-Sik-E-Mat. The men are silent. Great kings are buried here. My king is buried here. As we near his tomb, the high priest puts his hand on my shoulder. "Rapahamen," he says, "we have been through so much together, and all of it seems to have led us here." I feel the same way. When we reach the pharaoh's tomb, Ponner's men unload their tools from their donkeys, and he unloads the food and the jars of beer from his. 1 jar is passed around, and when his men have satisfied their thirst, Ponner orders them to gather their tools, reminding us all we have to be out of Ta-Sik-E-Mat before the police who guard the tombs return for their dawn patrol. He walks to the portal, then turns to the high priest and me. The high priest nods, and he breaks the seals securing the door. His men push the doors open just enough to enter, and Ponner leads them inside, the high priest and I following. My hind legs start to tremble, and I go down on all 4s. Some of the men light torches, and we begin the long descent to the antechamber. Once there, we walk through to the walled-up entrance of the burial chamber. "Do it," Ponner orders his men. 2 of them begin to strike the wall with their heavy mallets, each stroke jolting my heart. The plaster crumbles, large chunks falling to the stone floor, and a small hole soon appears, growing bigger as the work continues. The men hammering occasionally pause so the others can remove the mound of rubble with their shovels. When the opening is big enough to pass through, and the last of the rubble is removed, the men step away from the entrance, looking at the high priest and me. Taking a deep breath, the 2 of us walk side by side through, with the others following a few paces behind. The procession moves deeper into the burial chamber, where the pharaoh's red granite sarcophagus appears, majestic and forbidding. Ponner and his men retreat a few steps, in awe. "Don't be afraid," the high priest tells them. Standing erect, I leave his side to go to my king. I circle the sarcophagus. Sculpted on each corner is an image of one of the 4 goddesses who are the protectors of the dead. I stop to rub my head against each of them, giving thanks for having protected my king. "Open the sarcophagus," the high priest says to Ponner's men when I return to his side. Obediently, they begin using their tools to push the lid off. It's extremely heavy, and much time passes before, with a sound that congeals my blood, it moves. Finally, with the men praying and straining, it's pushed over the edge of the sarcophagus, falling on its side with a loud crash, then falling flat with a thunderous crash that shakes the stone floor and momentarily freezes my heartbeat. As the high priest and I walk towards the sarcophagus, he lifts me up to his shoulder, like Ezekiel, so I can see inside. The gilded wooden coffin is both human and mummy in shape, the lid sculpted and painted to form a lifelike portrait of the pharaoh dressed for his voyage into eternity. As he did in life, he wears the meanies, the headdress with blue and yellow stripes, the flaring cobra, and the jutting vulture head over his brow. He also has a long ceremonial chin beard and a broad collar covering his chest, which shows Ra and his day boat. The pharaoh's arms are crossed, and in his hands are the crook and the flail. Below his forearms, the sky goddess Nut kneels with outspread wings, and under her is a vertical band with prayers to Ra, Osiris, and other gods. On either side of the band are figures adoring the gods and scenes with underworld demons, one of which touches me deeply, Ra fighting the serpent Apep with the help of a cat. Oh, my king, when you live again, I will stand by your side when you kill Kakamut. The men look at the high priest, who nods, and they remove the lid from the coffin. A similar coffin appears, and with another nod from the high priest, they remove the lid. A third coffin appears, one made of solid gold, the coffin containing the pharaoh's body. The men again look at the high priest, who this time takes a deep breath before nodding. Then, their hands trembling, they slowly raise the lid. I immediately smell a blue lotus flower and carefully set it down on the stone floor. Only you two should be here now, Bonner says, telling his exhausted men to gather their tools. We'll wait outside by the entrance to the tomb. May the gods be with you. The high priest and I are now alone with the mummy of our king, which, incredibly, is surrounded by fresh blue lotus blossoms. His face is covered with a gold mask made in his likeness. His arms are crossed over his chest, and his hands, the fingers covered in gold foils, hold the flail and the crook. The amulet on his heart is shaped like a beetle. The high priest swallows hard, removes the mask from the mummy, and gently lays it on the ground. With a sharp piece of stone taken from the floor, he touches the embalming linen that covers Pharaoh's mouth. This is the opening of the mouth, he whispers to me. It is supposed to give the dead back their faculties. I remember him explaining the ritual to Elena. When he finishes, he remains silent, breathing deeply, as if preparing himself for a great exertion. Rapahamen, he says in a low voice. I am going to recite the spell. I've never been so scared. What if it doesn't work? I say. What will happen to Egypt? Only the Pharaoh can save her. I am convinced the spell will work, and the Pharaoh will be resurrected. You must believe it too. I'm sorry. Yes, I do believe it. Please go on. Oh, mighty Tot, the high priest begins, Lord of heavens, beautiful of night, you who love truth and hate abomination. As the high priest recites the spell, I study the mummy for a sign of life. Nothing. Finally, his words become almost inaudible, and before I know it, he stops. The mummy is as still as stone. Is it over? I ask. It has not worked, the high priest says, just as it did not work on Elena's mother. We have failed. His words strike my heart, and the pain of the blow makes me want to cry out, to beg him to try again. But before I can utter a word, a sudden burst of wind raises the dust in the tomb. The high priest and I are pushed away from the sarcophagus, and I'm knocked off his shoulder, falling on my hind legs. There's dust in my eyes, and I'm forced to close them. When I open them, a beautiful cat is standing erect in front of us, taller than me, the eyes a deep liquid lapis, the whiskers and eyelashes gold and silver threads. the coat and ever-changing likeness of many different cats. Rapa-Hamen, she says. I am Bastet. I turn to the high priest, who looks awestruck. That confirms it. I'm not hallucinating. As the cat goddess, this is my essential form, Bastet continues. But I can assume other forms as well, and I have already manifested myself to you as the mummy, as the statue of Khafre, and as Ezekiel. I have been guiding and protecting you, ensuring you would arrive at this time and place. I understand, I say. You have been in my life since you enabled me to walk and talk like a man. But why did you transform me to begin with? As you both know, she says, turning to the high priest, then back to me. About 500 years ago, your ancestor was unjustly accused by a judge, and Gato-Hamen's ancestor, a priest of my temple, prayed to me to give the cat the power to stand before his accuser and defend himself. But you didn't, I say, hoping I'm not being insolent. Because bestowing such powers upon him would have been a waste, I reserved them for you so a greater good would be served. I don't understand. You see, Rapa-Hamen, I gave you the ability to talk and walk so the pharaoh would be drawn to you. I made you human in other ways as well, so you could fully share in his life. You in turn gave the pharaoh joy and strength. I loved the pharaoh. I still love him, I cry, her mention of him having pierced my heart. Yes, I know, Bastet says, smiling. In your soul burns love, pure love. Only such a love could bring the pharaoh back from the realm of the dead. But the pharaoh is still dead. The spell hasn't worked. My love hasn't brought him back. We have come to the crux of the matter, Bastet says in a grave tone. I enabled you to read so you could memorize the words written on Khafre's statue. It is a prayer that can only be uttered once. That is why I wanted you to read it in silence. No, the high priest yells. Gato-Hamen understands, Bastet says before I can ask him what's wrong. The spell is incomplete without the prayer. I'll recite the prayer now, I say. No, do not, the high priest begs. First, I must ask you a question, Bastet says, ignoring him. Though you do not yet know what it is, you know of it. Of course, the question you told the high priest's ancestor you would put to Rapa-Hamen. He recorded it at the very end of his journal, but that piece of the papyrus has been eaten by mice. Such was my will. Then was not yet the time for you to know the question, but now is. Rapa-Hamen, are you willing to give your life so your beloved pharaoh can be brought back from the dead? Yes, I reply without hesitation. In reciting the prayer, you will sacrifice your life. The words of the prayer come rushing out of my mouth, but nothing happens. Why am I still alive? Oh, Rapa-Hamen, Bastet says, all I wanted of you was your willingness to sacrifice your life. You will not die this day. Indeed, you will live longer than any cat before you. And one day you will write about your extraordinary life. Now go to your pharaoh. In a blink of an eye, she disappears. A ray of white light emanates from the sarcophagus, and the earth trembles with the sound of thunder. The sarcophagus crumbles as the mummy and the coffins turn to flame. The heat so intense the high priest and I must retreat to the entrance of the burial chamber. The pharaoh emerges from the fire and comes toward us, naked, his arms crossed, still holding in his hands the flail and the crook. His skin is a reddish gold, which glows like the rising sun. The specks of gold in his lapis-colored pupils flash like tiny streaks of lightning. Rapa-Hamen, he says, his voice like that of the tenor in Aida. Your love has brought me back from the dead. The high priest tears a piece of cloth from his robe and gently wraps it around the pharaoh's waist. Egypt needs you, my king, he says. I know. The pharaoh walks out of the burial chamber, the high priest and I, too dumbfounded to move. What are you waiting for? He asks, turning. Come. We follow him through the antechamber and up the stairs to the entrance of the tomb. When he steps outside, Ponar and his men prostrate themselves, their foreheads touching the earth, afraid to look at the beautiful but forbidden sight in front of them. Rise and go, the pharaoh says to them. Tell whomever you see the father of Egypt has returned. Ponar and his men get up and leave, bowing and walking backwards. The pharaoh takes the path to the hill village, and we follow him, leaving Tarsiki-Mat the way we came. The stars have begun to disappear. When we near the village, the pharaoh stops and gazes east, the high priest and I beside him. The rising sun shines brightly, and so does my king. Ra has been reborn, and so has he. We enter the hill village to find that Ponar and his workers have brought their families. A crowd has formed. All are cheering, smiling and crying at the same time, the women throwing flowers at the pharaoh's feet. Ra has risen, they chant. Ra has risen! The high priest and I join in. Long live our king! Long live our father! The pharaoh stands before his people with his arms still crossed. Then, like a falcon spreading his wings, he extends them, the crook in one hand, the flail in the other. The chanting ceases. Leave me now, the pharaoh commands, and the people slowly make their way down to the village of Set-Mat. The high priest and I stand behind him, awaiting his instructions. He turns and gives us the symbols of his power, the flail to the high priest, the crook to me. Keep them for me, he says. When the time comes, I will send for you. Then, as I've been hoping he would, he picks me up and kisses me on the forehead, just as he used to. But now his kiss burns like fire. Sopdet, he whispers in my ear. He gently puts me down, turns away from us, and begins to walk towards the sacred peak, the pyramid-shaped mountain that once drew me, it seems a lifetime ago, to the looted tomb where we met. The high priest and I watch the pharaoh till we can no longer see him, till he and the desert are one. Rappahamen, the high priest says, looking at me. You have a white spot on your forehead. It's in the shape of a star. On the night of New Year's Day in Menfi, when the pharaoh and I were admiring the starry sky, he pointed to the star Sopdet. Far away in time, Rappahamen, he said, when you gaze upon that star, remember these magic moments. Oh, my king, I remember. And I also remember the night at Imentet, when you told me in my dream how your ancestors would stand in front of the great lion and wait for Sopdet to rise to mark the birth of the new year. When people ask me about the star on my forehead, I'll tell them about the beauty of those nights. I'll also tell them how I stood in front of your mummy and saw you reborn. What are you thinking? The high priest asks, interrupting my reverie. Let's walk, and I'll tell you.